Alright, the year is 2014, and Blade's birthday just came around, and Dad got me a new game called Minecraft Xbox One Edition. I didn't know what the game was, but I immediately fell in love after my dad taught me how to play when I was young. And now we're here. A couple of years ago, I tried playing hardcore Minecraft for the first time. I died several times and haven't gotten to 100 days since, even though I've tried my hardest. I've lost multiple worlds, survival, hardcore, and somehow creative one time. I'm not gonna elaborate on that though. Anyway, I thought it was a crime that I hadn't beat Minecraft hardcore mode ever after playing this game for over half my lifetime. So, I decided, today, sure, why not? I got free time. And then I started this long journey. So, let's see how this ends. But before we do that, two last things. One, all credit goes to TheNotable. He created this idea, he popularized this form of content. Just go check out his 100 days to 3,000 days series. It's definitely worth it. Please subscribe. This video took a lot of work, and I would really enjoy if you subscribed because it would help me out, and maybe I'll make 200 days. But we'll have to see how this goes first. So anyway, let's jump into it. Here we are, loading into the world for the very first time. We get there, and immediately I spawn in a dark oak forest surrounded by a bunch of birch trees and a nice spruce area. This is a pretty good place where I think I'll be happy to set up camp for these next 100 days. I then, for some reason, decided to chop down an entire dark oak tree, which means I have successfully wasted almost a quarter of my entire first Minecraft day. I then found my first mob and decided to punch it to death because I wanted to make a bed as quick as possible. I then went on to look for some land to set up a nice starter house. I then carved out an area because I needed cobblestone, and this area would also make a nice base like every other hardcore player carving their base into a hill. I then set up some nice logs to make it look like they were support beams on my house, so that way it didn't look like it was just floating in midair. I also made some slabs so that way I could have some nice steps going up to my house. I then put the doors in to a place where I think is good enough to call home. I then used some of the leftover wood that I have so I could cook more wood so that way I could get charcoal, which I would use to cook the wood again, and then I would use to make torches. I then decided, for whatever reason, to build a tunnel going up to the surface, even though I had one right outside my door along that hill. I would never use this tunnel, so I don't know why I made it, to be honest. But luckily, I did find my first pieces of coal, which helped speed up the process, even with that charcoal cooking. During the night of day 1, I decided that I wanted to know whether it was day or night out, but since I didn't have resources to make a clock, I decided the easiest way was to make a window. And dangerously, and a bit stupidly, I went out at night to get some sand so that way I had the resources to make a window inside of my house. I should not have gone out at night. That was very dangerous, but luckily the area I put my house on, mobs can't really get to me that easily unless they're drowned, which are coming from the nearby river. Once that glass was done cooking, I started putting the infrastructure in to put a window in, which again, like I just mentioned, I went outside at night, which is still very dangerous considering I had no armor. On the morning of the actual day 1, I decided to go out and start chopping some trees. I also decided to go out and do a little bit of terraforming around my house, just so that way that window didn't look so out of place. After basically spending most of the day terraforming, I decided to go out and get a nice lay of my land, and also maybe collect some of the spruce wood from the nearby forest. While exploring, I found some iron, which is great because I really need armor in this mode, otherwise mobs are way more dangerous. With armor, they're still pretty dangerous, but, you know, a little bit safer. I then killed some more sheep, even though they were all the wrong color, so I couldn't even make a bed. With my iron I gathered from that trip, I decided to make a shield and a pickaxe, which I think is pretty reasonable. Eventually, while mining, I'd end up breaking into a cave, which I thought was pretty dangerous because most of the other times in my life where I tried to do hardcore, I'd end up dying in these to some stupid mob. While exploring the cave, I found even more iron, which was really good. I would also have my first real encounter with the mob with a skeleton shooting at me. Even though it was pretty easy to deal with, I was still kinda scared of that area of the cave, so I ended up just walling that entire part off. After exploring that area, I would just wall the entire area off because I was scared of mobs coming down from that cave and then coming up through the mine shaft into my house. I would also have my first close encounter with death with a skeleton with a pretty overpowered bow doing 3 hearts of damage to me, which immediately scared me and made me put myself in a 1x2 box so that way he couldn't shoot me. At this point, I would just sit in that box for a little bit and relax because I realized I had gone too deep into the caves and my next goal was to immediately get out of there. Also today, I'd be able to make a bed and finally went to sleep for the first time in this world. I would also use some of the iron that I got down in the caves to make myself some iron armor. This was very useful considering the close encounter I just had with the skeleton. Then I just decided to mine all of the rest of night 2. And then, while mining some iron, I found a raw iron ore block, which is my first time ever in this game encountering a raw block of any material. So that's kind of neat. I then used some of the resources I got down the mine, not for an effective purpose, just to make my bed look cool, which this was really unnecessary in a very ugly spot, so not sure why I did that. And then, while mining, I would find my first set of diamonds, which is crazy I got them this early, but I guess that's what I get for mining in the deep slate for several days. You can see in the footage that I kinda just looked at it for a minute in shock that I already found them. So that was nice. I then took a screenshot with my new diamond pickaxe, which I ended up posting on my community tab. Which, if you haven't checked, you should check the place out, cause I post teaser images for upcoming videos like this. While exploring, I noticed a nearby village and decided to boat over to it. This is very useful, and I decided that I immediately needed to start setting up some infrastructure to take the villagers right back to my base. But for some reason, instead of setting this up in a useful manner, I decided the easiest way was to put a boat right next to the villagers and then try and take that boat near to the river. This ended up working, but I wouldn't recommend this. This was pretty lazy. As soon as I got home, I started digging out a small area that I could use to house the villagers. Unfortunately for the villagers, this is where they'd pretty much end up staying for a majority of these 100 days. Since I needed some way to get the villagers in, I decided to build a small port. And this would end up becoming my favorite thing I built in the world. I don't really have a real explanation for it. I just really enjoyed how cozy it seemed, and also I think that I want to build a more permanent version once I have pistons. While trying to install the crawl space, the baby villager just ended up running out, so I had to deal with that so I could go to bed. It's nothing major, but it still was a minor annoyance. But the crawl space was a very good idea. It kept all baby villagers that I'd breed in it inside, and I was able to get in without any major issues. Using some leftover glass from the window, I installed another window on the villager pen so that way I could make sure that they were all safe when they grew up. After getting the second villager in with no problems at all, I started mining out a large area that I would eventually turn into a farm. This was very useful for breeding the villagers, even though its original purpose was just to make the villagers have an auto farm so that way I could breed them without doing anything. I didn't end up having enough time in the world, and the farm itself worked fine. And basically all I did the rest of the day was just continue to work on my farm until nighttime. So, let's see what happens tomorrow. I also installed a bell so that way I could just annoy the villagers whenever I felt like it. It's a good addition, I swear. Today, I also started digging out a spot for a project that I'll do in a couple days. The next day, I decided that I need to start setting up a road so that way I could get some sheep inside of my base so I could shear them and then make more beds for the villagers. Eventually, after searching for most of the day, I found some sheep just chilling in a small grassy area. I then kidnapped one and took it home in a boat. After getting all sheeps into my house again, I got the first one out of the boat fine, and then he climbed in the boat with the second one. While I tried to break the boat underneath both of them so that way I could lure them into a pen, one of them ended up getting stuck on the wall and suffocating to death. I tried to save them, but it was too late. I then, after murdering a cow in my boat, got the second sheep back home safely. I then needed to mine out an area for the sheeps to go, and I put in the worst possible spot. In the coming days, the amount of sheeps I bred would get very annoying, and the boss would increase by a lot. Most of the rest of the day was basically just trying to get the sheep into the pen. I also set up like a little dirt path that could give the sheep grass. It kind of worked. It was just way too inefficient. I then dug out an area that I would use to grow saplings, so that way I didn't have to go outside and get trees myself. Most of the day was spent farming. I also set up a small sugarcane farm, so that way I could grow it for when I needed it later. I also started adding to the biggest mistake in this world, breeding more sheep up. They got very loud and very annoying. This is my biggest regret in the world out of these entire 100 days. I made tons of dirt paths going around my base, so that way I could get the sheep some grass, so that way they could get their wool back. This took forever. Grass grows slower than moss somehow in this game. So this would not pay off for several days. Also accidentally, after the sheep murder, I decided that it was time to make a new loading bay. And I thought that building a nice dirt tube would look good. I think I was going for a cave aesthetic when I thought of the idea, but this never really came to fruition. After finishing my port, I put some cobblestone in, which I think I was trying to go for that cave aesthetic I mentioned earlier, but I didn't really have the time to lean into it in these 100 days. Yeah, that's kind of all I did that day, unless you want to see the mining footage, which it's not very entertaining. You might enjoy it if you're weird. Today I also started digging out an area for a bedroom. My bedroom is also the only room I ended up furnishing in the house till I built the later on expansions. But that's later, so don't worry about that. I also bred a baby villager, which was actually beneficial, unlike the sheep. While checking the iron farm, I found a fish down there that I would name Gilbert, and I would bring back home and put in a fish tank. And then I started carving out the space that fish tank would be in. I then put Gilbert in his fish tank and realized I had no glass to seal the thing off with. So I went to go get some sand. After putting some glass panes in the tank, I immediately realized that wasn't going to work because Gilbert would end up leaning against them and wouldn't get any water and would end up suffocating to death. But I just put in some glass blocks and that fixed the issue. I finished off the glass box and decided to put some trapdoors in so that way if I wanted to put any more fish in there, I could. While shearing the sheep, a baby got out, so I took care of it. My next goal was to finish the iron farm, which I needed to get villagers into, and then they all started running around because I decided to use baby ones. So I had to get them back and get them on the path again. I ended up just using water to push them down. It was the easiest way to get them where I needed them to go. The villagers were being pretty annoying while I was trying to get them in, trying to run all over the place, so I needed to use more water. But I was scared of drowning them, so this took a while. I then got the second baby villager in, which went way smoother because I knew what I was doing this time. I'd also like to mention that every day I'm doing a little bit of farming and breeding up of the sheep. Even though I don't show it, I'm doing it almost every day. Today I decided that it was time to start putting up some walls. I thought that it'd be a little bit safer, and I could put some torches around so that way no mobs would spawn on the inner wall. And, it's less danger and it can block out creepers, zombies, skeletons, and any other things that wants to come kill me. And all I did was wall till night. After finishing up the last little bit of walling, I decided to flatten out the small hill right next to my stairs so that way I could light up the land evenly. After finishing off flattening off most of the land, I decided to put in a small guardrail so that way I couldn't fall and, die. Today also just had a lot more flattening of the land. Today I also decided to start construction on the most useless thing in this entire world. Just a big pit that goes down to Y0. I'm not entirely sure why I decided to dig this, but this was one of the most useless things that I had dug in the entire world. Today I also started setting up the area where the zombie would go once I finished the iron farm. I needed a zombie to harvest villager fear. Villager fear allows iron golems to spawn. So if I had a zombie down there, it'd allow iron golems to spawn on the iron farm, which would give me iron once they died. After having these villagers for a very long time, I just decided that I was going to turn one into a Fletcher because I had a lot of wood that I was going to use for sticks so that way I could get emeralds. And then I immediately realized that I did not have as much wood as I thought I did, so I had to go get more, which was a little bit of a pain. Today I decided to start digging the tunnel that I would need to get a zombie into the iron farm. I'd have to lure the zombie down the stairs and then get him into the hole where the boat is, and then he would just sit there and let the iron farm work. The plan was pretty simple. Just have some cobblestone walls and then put those around, have a fence gate, have the zombie walk through the fence gate at night so that way he wouldn't despawn, lure him into the iron farm. It's pretty simple. I also set up a system where if I flip a lever, this piston will activate, which will keep the zombie from going back up the stairs and escaping. On the night of day 20, I just decided that I was going to lure the zombie, and I said everything was good enough, and I started luring one in. Now, the hardest part of getting him actually in there was just finding the zombie. It's surprisingly, around my land, we prefer to have skeletons, which arguably are the most annoying, but, you know, it was a minor thing. Eventually, I found a zombie and started luring down the stairs. Everything went pretty well. I just pushed him into the boat with water, but he did kind of escape for a second, but I just hit him, he went back in the boat. So, yeah, pretty simple, and we did it. Now, when I first originally built the iron farm, I just had some dirt, so I just used the basic suffocation method. I thought that'd be too slow because I have iron and a bucket now, so I was gonna go get some lava so that way I could burn them way quicker. But after realizing I had no clue where any lava pool was, I just decided to use dirt. This didn't work at all, so yeah, I had to finish with it. After having no iron golems spawning, my solution was to go mess with the iron farm. Big mistake. The villagers ended up running around and being very annoying the entire time. After what I'm gonna say is punishment for messing with the iron farm, a villager got stuck in the boat with the zombie, which, not great. If either I kill the zombie, which I already destroyed the way I got him in, I cleaned everything up already, or I just break the boat and hope that everyone survives. This did not happen. The zombie started attacking the villager, and I had to stay around, so that way the zombie would focus me and not the villager. This didn't work at all, and the villager ended up getting zombified, so that's great. So because I wanted lava for the iron farm, I decided that I wanted to go adventure for it. So I went back to that old village to see if there was any lava there. Luckily, I did actually find some in a nearby cave right next to the village. Yeah, most of the rest of today was just kind of used to, like, watch the villagers, so this one's not very entertaining, so to the next one. After getting a bunch of emeralds from the Fletcher, I decided that I wanted some diamond tools, so I got a toolsmith. Getting a toolsmith is probably one of the best ways to get diamond tools. Today I also started working on the new expansion of my house, which for that I needed to go chop down some logs so that way I could put a nice support beam in. It's not really necessary, but I think it just looks nice. The problem I thought I was having with the iron farm is that I wasn't close enough, so I lowered the entire thing 3 blocks. This was not the issue. The problem was an iron golem I found after digging around in the walls. He was stopping the entire production because he spawned in a nearby cave. So and then I started slabbing the entire cave so that way no one could spawn in there ever again. I know I needed to get rid of the iron golem, but I was kind of scared to fight him because that could kill me. So I tried to use lava. It ended up turning into obsidian, and I had to go get another one. I took my boat and went around the outer coast of the island to see if there was any lava. There was not, unfortunately. Eventually I did find a pit of lava, and then I just grabbed the lava and leave. I got home and immediately burnt the iron golem to a crisp. Day 28 was basically just more framing of the house. Day 29 was basically me just landscaping so the house wouldn't look that bad. I decided that I wanted to get a librarian, which I would need leather for so that way I can make books into a bookshelf and then into a lectern so that way I could have a librarian. So most of the day was basically just sailing to go find some cows. Yeah, I didn't find any cows, so I just kind of went home and started to do some flooring on the new house. The next day, I immediately started sailing out to go find some cows again. After sailing for a little while, I eventually found some cows, and I immediately kidnapped them and brought them home. After getting the first cow home safely, I just went back, grabbed the second cow, and sailed home. Everything went smooth, which was very nice. I got the cows out of the boat and just put them in a small pen right next to the house, and everything went well. Most of day 31 was just trying to get the villager that I wanted. I kept getting, like, really bad book enchantments, so I just had to mess with it for a while. While looking for some coal so that way I could put in my furnace to make stone and then make stone bricks, I came across a woodland mansion. That I marked down and did not go in because I was very under-equipped for that. I did a lot of housing this day. I mainly worked on, like, making sure stairs were put in correctly and stuff, but I kind of had to line it up with the hill because I didn't have enough resources to finish the entire back of the house, and also I wanted more space in the house so I could burrow underneath the island and then have more space in there. Eventually I started using so much cobblestone and stone to finish off that ceiling that I had to mine out large chunks underground so I could have enough cobblestone to finish. And the rest of it was just basically more roofing. I tried to trap a dolphin in my inner wall on my water area, But for some reason, the dolphin ended up dying, and I am not entirely sure why. I'm not gonna lie, I really don't get dolphin mechanics. They die for the weirdest reasons. Today, I also put a stairway into the area that I've been working on, so that way I have a larger section of the house I can use for anything I want. And by this point, I realized my iron farm wasn't working, so I started gathering materials to actually build a proper one. Also, you can definitely hear this. The sheeps will not shut up. So, this became a minor annoyance, and I really considered thinning the herd after these couple of days. I took a screenshot that also said as much, which again, I'll plug my community tab, where I post teasers for things like this. Here's me testing for the screenshot I would post of me wanting to kill all of them. And then I went mining because I needed more iron so that way I could make hoppers so that way I could gather the iron from the iron farm. More mining on day 38. Today I also found a lava pit that I would use to get some obsidian so that way I could build a nether portal and finally go to the nether. Yep, day 39 was literally just more mining. After finishing all that mining, I finally had the resources to start construction on the iron farm. So, I went up and I started building where the iron farm would eventually end up being. Yeah, because I had all the resources, I kind of finished setting up the basic things I needed to for the iron farm. Now I just need to get the villagers and the zombie in, which is what I'm doing here. I'm setting up some dirt paths so that way I'm able to lure the villagers in smoothly. I eventually just decided to recycle the villagers from the iron farm that didn't work originally, so I decided to bring the zombie villager all the way up. This was kind of annoying because he was a bit tall and also his AI was a bit buggy and he didn't really know how to follow me. I then transported the villagers, getting them in smoothly. And if you're curious to see what the method I used to lure them was, all I just did was use the stone cutter and then get them to go to it, move it a little bit, let them follow it, and then repeat until you get there. Eventually I tried to do 2 villagers at a time, which was a grave mistake because they all kept pushing each other, so that way the one in the back would just try and push the one in the front, but the one in the front wouldn't want to move at all. So it was pretty annoying. But eventually I got all the villagers in, which would allow the iron farm to work. Unfortunately, I did not realize that the zombie villager I had captured was dead. I'm not sure where the footage is for this, but I got to drown in the iron farm and eventually started working again. And then there was a new problem. Iron golems would end up spawning inside of my house, so I had to start slabbing stuff. So most of the day was just finished off with slabbing up stuff. I'm still scared of the iron golems because I didn't have any great armor. I decided that I was just gonna dig a path up and then push him out and let him fight for his own. Most of the next day was just sitting around camp and testing things. I just wanted to make sure that the iron farm was working fine and actually producing iron and not screwing everything up. And another thing that I don't mention, every day I'll chop down a couple trees and just try and sell some sticks so that way I can make a little bit of money. Basically the same thing that I did for the sheep and farming. I will just do it a day, but I'm not going to mention it because it's nothing noteworthy. I decided that the iron farm looked pretty ugly, so I started to make a little dirt path around it. I eventually would turn this into a small island, and you'll see what this will become later. I then started putting in some logs, so that way I could create a structure around the iron farm. The next day, I was immediately back to tree chopping, because creating structure on the iron farm was way more expensive than I originally thought. Also, while building, I had an iron golem spawn on one of the support beams, so that was a little thing I had to deal with. I then had to go to a nearby beach to get some sand for some glass in the lighthouse, which is what the iron farm is, just because I thought it was creative. You know, the iron golems burn, and they burn bright like a light in a lighthouse. That makes sense. It very makes sense. For the glass in the lighthouse, I wanted to make some light gray dye, and for that I need some white dye. So I set up a small contraption that would take all the leftover seeds I had from farming, put them into a composter, and then immediately make some bone meal, so that way I could just turn that into white dye from there. Most of the day was just putting on construction and building up a little bit more, so that way I could finish this. I set up a little path so that way I could just go from my house to the iron farm without having to go outside where the mobs could possibly get me. Day 48 was even more construction. Same exact thing on day 49. Day 50, I was literally just putting some more glass in. There's really nothing eventful to talk about for the next couple days. Besides the glass, one of the other hardest part of this project was getting the hopper, which required tons of wood and tons of iron. This was a pain to get. Interesting commentary. Yes, that is the entire joke. Today I also started clearing out an area that all my villagers would go in, because I wanted to give them a proper home that wasn't a really small box. While using my iron silk touch pickaxe, I decided to make the walls all stone brick. So, that's exactly why I did. I don't know why, but I decided to put bars on the end of the villager cage. I mean house, I swear, it's a house. And then I had to move the villagers, which was kind of a pain because they were a bit too close to the wall, so they started suffocating for a second, but eventually I figured it out. I finally finished putting in the glass for this stairway going to the iron farm. Day 53, I just took more screenshots. Slabbing. That's it. It's just slabbing. Nothing interesting, it's just slabbing. I started playing around with the idea that I was going to add a second floor, basically just because I wanted to extend the villager area, but I didn't end up doing that, mostly just because iron golems started spawning up there. I'm not entirely sure why. I'm pretty sure it was the iron farm, but at the same time it could have been the villagers next to it. As you can see, the iron golem spawned here, which was very annoying, mostly because I spent a lot of today just building up the floor, and it just doesn't do anything. There was also a little bit of cow slaughter today. During the nighttime, I decided to start flattening out more land and putting in some more walls. I want this place as safe as it can be. Yeah, all of today was mostly just walling. I also went fishing for an iron golem today, and I had finished by the end of the night, so the walling is all done. I started on my next project, which was gathering stone so that way I could finish the lighthouse. Remember a couple days ago how I mentioned I was clearing out an area for a frame of a building? Well, we're digging out more area, both because I need stone for the lighthouse, and I want to clear that area out so I can start putting storage stuff in it. I also started putting in a frame for the largest building on the entire area that I live in. This would go on to become my storage area. Eventually, I put silk touch on my diamond pickaxe. I didn't really care that I was using up a lot of durability. I needed the stone desperately, and I was trading up for some people that could sell me armor and tools, so it was no real cost to use diamond tools. I started working on the inside of my second floor so that way everything could be nice and pretty. On day 60, I decided that I wanted to make my home a little bit safer. So I started putting some iron golems that were mine inside of the walls. I also moved the cows inside because I was really sick of going outside just to breed them. Most of day 62 was just spent messing with villagers so that way I could get the specific enchantment books that I need from librarians. Every other moment of day 62 was just spent digging and flattening out land. Day 63, after messing with an armor, I eventually got my first piece of diamond armor. Just a pair of diamond boots. The same day I got the diamond boots, I put feather falling 4 and unbreaking 3. So I was way stronger now. The entire day 64 can be summarized by the word digging. I also realized digging out the entire layer just to this one layer of ground was very unreasonable and I did not have the time for it. So what I decided to do was just make this little corner piece that would have been elevation level so that way you could just get to the bigger storage room. Day 65 was just spent putting in more pieces to the house. And sometime today I also traded with a villager and got a diamond chestplate. I also got a diamond helmet, so probably should mention that. I also started working on the walls upstairs so that way everything looked nice. While leaving the villager pen, the villager tried to escape. He did get out, but eventually I got him right back into his cage. I also worked on the ceiling today. It was a very boring day, if you can't tell. That night, I ended up just finishing off the area and going straight to bed. Day 68 was mostly just spent messing with the villagers, trying to get the trades I wanted. I also started mining out a large area that I would use to put some more villagers in. I was breeding a lot, and every time I'd mess with them, some would try and escape. So I figured if I built a larger area, then it'd be harder for them to leave. And then I finished it, because apparently my diamond pickaxe is way stronger than I thought. I also started moving all of their beds to one side of the room so that way their workstations wouldn't be so crowded. I also started putting some villagers in some small boxes so that way they couldn't run around. I continued to mess with the villagers all the way into the night and the morning of the next day. Today I started hollowing out an area that would soon be used just for the purpose of breeding more villagers. If you don't know how this works, it's a small auto breeder. The way it works is you dig out a hole and then you put some trapdoors above that hole. When you get a baby villager, it will try and walk across those trapdoors to where beds are. It thinks that bed is that its home, and then it will immediately fall into the hole, get pushed through here. It's being bred by 2 farmers who sit up top, and then, a farm. Boom, bang, bop. Now I am more villagers. Yeah, getting this done was not hard at all. Building the farm was super cheap, and I'm pretty much a boss at this point. I decided to use the food, which was potatoes, mostly because you get the most of these when you farm them. So I assumed that you'd get more baby villagers, because they'd get more food so they could breed easier. Most of day 72 was just spent messing with the villagers, trying to get them to assign their bed and breed properly, because I knew they had food. On day 73, the farm just started working. I don't really know why. I was trying to figure out why iron golems were spawning outside the iron farm, and my solution to the idea was to chop down the big mushrooms that were spawnable. I don't think that was the issue, but it did get iron golems to stop spawning for a little while, so good enough. Day 75, I started clearing out an area for another portal. I decided that I had good enough armor, and it was time to finally explore. And here's a really good tip for you. Put some form of doors around your nether portal. I would prefer iron doors. You see, iron doors can't be opened by piglins the way normal doors can. If you don't put normal doors or iron doors, use fence gates. Just something that if a mob were to come into your home, he cannot attack you as easily because there's a door holding them back. And then you wait for them to become zombified, and if you don't have a zombified piglin aggroed, then they won't attack you, so you can deal with them nice and easily. I went to the nether and immediately grabbed what I also wanted there. I needed quartz. I wanted to make observers, and I wanted to make comparators. That is half the entire reason I even came here. So I grabbed that and immediately left. I finally started working on that storage system that I wanted to do ever since I built this building. I then started digging out a tunnel going from my house up to that auto storage area, just because I was scared to go outside. And then I took another screenshot that, let me remind you again, is on my community tab. Go check that place out. I post teasers for things. Trust me, I got a couple videos coming out, a lot of things I streamed. There's some videos you'll want to see. I then started making some hoppers and chests because I was going to set up an auto shearing machine so that way I could get wool from sheep so that way I could sell that wool and then I'd immediately make more money. I then immediately started setting up that wool farm and it worked perfectly fine. The sheep went in nice. The only issue I was having though is that I didn't have enough iron. Every day I'd go to my iron farm, get some iron, sell that iron, get emeralds, and then those emeralds I would just use on books. I didn't have any iron left over because I kept spending it all, so I didn't have enough resources to make shears, just so that way I could even get the farm working for more money. So this was a real issue. Now if you don't know the collection system, it's kind of interesting. The way a wool farm works is I have to shear the sheep, but to shear the sheep I need them to grow wool. For them to grow wool, I need to have the grass block below them that they can eat. So they eat the grass block, and then I have a observer that can detect that that block changed, and then that dispenser will dispense shears, shear the sheep, and then from there, there's a hopper minecart underneath which can collect the wool, and then I put that into a system, which eventually the plan is to hook it up to my auto storage, even though I never had time to finish that, so I just left it there, and the unfortunate part was I never really went back to collect it, just because I didn't have a reason to when I wasn't building another farm in this system. Day 68 was just messing with a villager till I got an enchantment book, and eventually I get efficiency 5. The only issue being that it's 64 emeralds for one book, and I wasn't gonna set up zombification because I didn't feel like going to another fortress and possibly dying. So, that's fun. Day 79 was just working on even more villager stuff. Day 80 was just spent setting up even more wool farm infrastructure. Day 81, I just started expanding the floor of the upstairs room where the storage area is. I then started extending the frame on day 82, so that way I could have a much larger building. And I spent most of night 82 just chopping down trees. Yeah, and during all of these days, I've been working on villager stuff. If you can see my bow and arrow, that has tons of enchantments. Half of the day are very short because mostly I'm just messing with villagers so I can get enchants for my bow. I continued to extend the frame of this building until I literally got to the hill to the point where I decided, yeah, I can't really go any farther. Day 84 was the exact same thing as day 83, just more chopping and putting some frames up. And that's it. Day 85 was spent flattening the ground out so that way I could put some stone bricks for the flooring. I also finally set up a villager that I could sell my wool to that I've been making for several days now. I then started putting in that stone brick floor. Day 87, I wanted to finally make myself an island. So, the way I decided to do this was dig out a massive area between the island next to me and where my home was. So, I just dug out a massive ravine, filled it with water, and this would be a project that took a couple days. So, yeah, let's see how this goes. Day 88 was the exact same thing, just more digging. There was a lot of tree chopping on day 89, and that was basically all that happened on day 89. After chopping all those trees, I decided to just turn them all into sticks and sell them to my Fletcher. Day 90. We only got 10 more days, so let's see how this goes. Day 90, I just started putting up some chains and hanging emerald blocks from it because I thought it looked cool and I wanted to take a neat teaser image. Wow, look at how rich I am. I guess I'd never have to touch those emerald blocks ever again. Just gonna take those and not mention it. Where did all the emerald blocks on my ceiling go? Villagers, they got out and they added a new feature in 1.19 where villagers can steal emerald blocks. So they took it and yeah. Day 91, I decided to take down the mushroom right next to my entrance. While I really like the mushroom, I just didn't like having it where it was. So I decided that it was finally time to move it. And then I put the mushroom right next to my shore because I thought it looked nice and it was pretty cool. I then decided that it was time to go on an adventure for these last couple days. So it was time for the crazy stuff. After traveling a couple thousand blocks, I decided that I was gonna go and set up a small shack in a birch forest. I thought that it looked nice, and it was fine for the night. I flattened out the land and started putting up some nice birch walls with small window holes. Realizing that I didn't really have too much time left, I decided that windows weren't really gonna work, so I just put in some trapdoors and thought that that was good enough. And of course, it isn't a home without a corny sign. So I thought home is a block away, it's corny enough. I also dyed my bed red, and I'm not really gonna explain that, because if you know, you know. I saw a woodland mansion and thought it'd be funny if I died super close to the end, so I went in. I started burrowing under the mansion, and that was one of the safest ways that I probably could have gone in. If I needed to escape, there was a large area that I could have just ran out through. I then found what I was looking for, an evoker. If you kill the evoker, you get a totem of undying, which basically means if your health depletes to 0, then you have a chance at living again. It'll give you a bunch of buffs. If you fall in lava, I know it gives fire resistance, so there's just tons of things that it does good. The only issue is that the evoker is a little bit of an annoying thing to deal with, mostly because of the Vex. Luckily, because of my bow and having power 5, it really wasn't that much of a threat, and it cleared this place pretty easily. I cleared the entire woodland mansion with the span of one night, so by day 93, we're good. I also got home on day 93, so that was pretty cool. I then went to the Nether to do a little bit of exploring and ended up getting the Return to Sender achievement, which, if you don't know, it's just hitting a fireball from a ghast back at the ghast. Day 94, I also got the music disc cat after having a skeleton kill a creeper. Most of day 94 was just tree chopping because I needed a lot of wood for the last project I was gonna do. Today I started putting in the frames of the tower that was gonna contain several relics from over the history of the Sonder Dades. Day 95. We're 5 days away from being done. Well, I realized that I needed more glass for my tower so that way I could look over my land. So, I went to go gather some from that nearby beach that I used to build the lighthouse. I also started dyeing some of the sheep so that way I could put in some nice colored carpet and that way my party room would look a little bit cooler. Today, a major design flaw of the tower would show its face, but I just completely ignored it. So, basically what happened is a skeleton followed me up the water stream and ended up shooting me off of the top of the tower. To be fair, this is the only time in the world that I thought I was actually gonna die. I did end up surviving, and then I proceeded to capture that skeleton and name it World Ender. I then put the carpet to my party room in. Most of the rest of the day was just putting in framing a little bit more and also putting some windows in. Day 97. I just set up a small cage for Gilbert and tax evasion. I didn't really mention tax evasion as much, but tax evasion was the other fish that I caught. but I still prefer Gilbert. I then started setting up a tube that I would use to get World Ender into his cage up top near the relic. I tried to get World Ender into his new home, but he decided that he didn't really want to do that, so he just kept walking backwards. This was really annoying just because he kept shooting at me and I couldn't move him otherwise. I tried to use my water bucket, but there were massive holes on the side of my little bridge, so the water would just flow out. So I had to push him, and he kept shooting me, just damaging my armor, and it was really annoying. Eventually, I did get World Ender into the tube. The only issue was, he couldn't swim up, and he just kept shooting himself with the arrows, which made me panic, because if he died, I couldn't really get another one as authentic. I then went to the middle of the ocean, literally just to get a little bit of kelp, so that way I could make a bubble elevator, so that way I could push World Ender up and into the tower. By sunrise, I had gotten World Ender up and into his room. I then set up a bubble elevator, so that way I could have an easy way up and down the tower. The only notable thing that happened on day 98 was that I put some iron blocks and emerald blocks in, just to show that I had a little bit of money in this world. I then recreated the little harbor that I had in my first couple days in this world before I made an improved version. I then foolishly took a screenshot of what I thought was day 100. I then posted that to my community tab, immediately realized that wasn't day 100, and then immediately deleted it. Day 99, I was spent making a path up to the tower from my storage facility. I'm just gonna voice over this as I walk around without my hotbar, or you can't see anything and it's all in first person mode. I really enjoyed making this. Every other time I try and make 100 days, I ended up just dying really quickly. But this is my first try in over about a month, or a couple months actually, that I ended up surviving, and I was very proud that I have. What I will say is I do want to make another one of these. The only issue is I'm not setting myself a time limit. This one, I set a time limit, and that overall hindered me in the end by a lot. I thought that, oh, if I set a time limit, I'll be more motivated. Which, in reality, no. It was really hard to work on these. I spent 2 weekends about up till 11 o'clock each night working on this. That's starting about 8 in the morning to 11 o'clock at night. There was over 24 hours of footage to edit for this video, of course. Overall, I learned how to do it way quicker near the end, but it still did take a pretty big toll on my time. I wouldn't say that my mental health got affected because I've done much worse for basic school projects, but overall, it was a little bit annoying to devote every single piece of my time on the weekend, just so that way I could edit this one video by Christmas. Which, if you're watching this and you're at the end, Merry Christmas! It's the beginning of, or it's the end of December for us, so if you're watching this next year's Christmas or the years after that's Christmas, Merry Christmas. And I really hope that you guys overall enjoyed this video and you got what you wanted from it. So, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Hey, remember earlier how I mentioned that my thing has a design flaw? You want to see what that design flaw is? Yeah, a creeper came in while I was trying to have my nice somber moment at the end of these 100 days and just destroyed everything. Which, I don't care. I'll fix it in 200 days. Whoop-de-doo!